of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask our Vice Chair to do the roll call.
Al Almeida.
Here.
Juanita Harris. Here. Teresa Bazade. Present. Michelle Coelho. Here. Kate Canetta.
Here.
Gladys Cooper.
Here.
Mary Cronin. Lauren Daly.
Here.
Richard Hawley.
Yes.
Richard Janelli.
Here. Thank you. Good evening again to everyone. We have public participation. I will read the script that we usually read at our board meeting. The board welcomes public participation and asks that speakers please limit their comments to 3 minutes. Speakers may offer and object to comments of school operation and programs that concern them. The board will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about Board of Education personnel and students, nor against any person connected with the Danbury Public Schools. Before the start of the board meeting, those wishing to address the board in public sessions are to sign the public participation sign-up sheet, complete with your name, address, and a phone number, and the topic they wish to speak on. Documents intended for the board are to be submitted to the recording secretary. The board chairperson shall call on the public to address the board in the order in which they appear on the sign-up sheet. 3 minutes may be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 30 minutes for public participation. The board may modify these limitations by a majority vote of those present at the beginning of the meeting if the number of persons wishing to speak make it advisable to do so. Thank you. Right now, do we have anyone that would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on down the agenda. And we are happy to have Shelter Rock here to spotlight their school. So come on out, Shelter Rock.
Thanks.
Can you hear me? Sorry. So we would like to say thank you so much for the opportunity to spotlight Shelter Rock. Kristen, Bradley, and myself, we are the new administrators at Shelter Rock. This is my 2nd year there. Kristen started with us this year. We're very happy to have her there. We both feel very fortunate to be at Shelter Rock. Our students are very respectful, hardworking, kind to one another, and our staff is very positive and very solution-minded oriented. We have a very strong school community supported by our amazing PTO who's here today. They're absolutely amazing. As of today, we have a total of 561 students placed in 27 general education classrooms. We have 247 students identified as multilingual learners, which is 44% of all of our students, and 10% of our students have an IEP. But honestly, Shelter Rock is so much more than numbers. We decided to put a video together with our students and staff, and they'll be the ones talking about our amazing school community. I hope you enjoy it.
Good.
At Shelter Rock, all students will feel connected and safe so that they will meet or exceed grade level standards by the time they graduate 5th grade.
Because we believe that all students can grow and be successful in a positive and engaging learning environment.
At Shelter Rock, we rock.
These are the core values we created as a school. We are safe, we persevere, we are kind, we empower, we are respectful.
We are safe, we are severe, we are kind, we are power, we are respectful.
At Shelter Rock, we advocate. We celebrate all forms of diversity and actively work to protect the rights of all in our community.
During our Multicultural Day, students, families, and staff celebrated a variety of cultures that represent our community. We had many different performances, activities, and food that was donated by local restaurants.
Last year, we brought back an old tradition to Shelter Rock, the talent show. Our teachers encouraged us to show off our many talents, and we were so proud of our hard work and performance. The night of the talent show was huge. It was a huge success. Everyone did a fantastic job. At Shelter Rock, we collaborate. We work well with others to identify problems and create solutions with an open mind.
Hay 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 grupos de 2. 8 grupos de 2. No, suma 2 veces el 8. 8 más 8, 16. Suma 2 veces el 8.
Okay.
2 veces 8 más 8, 16. 16 más 16, 1 más 16.
Dylan, tell me in English, what did you have to do?
6 más 6, 10
Wait, but Dylan, how many columns do you have? How many columns?
2.
2. And how many rows?
8.
Good job. So what's the expression?
8, 2 times 8.
Good job.
First grade teachers collaborate techniques work together to teach us important math skills all through the year. We go to different teachers to learn about the first grade standards so brains can grow.
Every week, we get together with other classes to work on skills that are planned by our teachers. We coach younger students by helping them with reading and writing. We try really hard to be great role models.
Our principals provide us with time to collaborate as grade level teams and with different departments. We always use this time to talk about student work and how to move their learning forward.
At Shelter Rock, we communicate. We communicate our own thoughts and emotions as well as effectively engage with other perspectives and feelings of others. During our town hall meeting, we talk about important issues related to our school and we celebrate students for their success.
We have the opportunity to share what is happening in our lives. Our teachers help us talk to our feelings. There are special places in our school that we can go to when we need help with our emotions.
At Shelter Rock, we innovate. We identify problems and create solutions. For the past 30 years, all of the students are invited to create a science project that will be showcased to the whole school. We invite our parents to attend it and learn about the solutions we have created to solve problems.
Every day at the end of lunch, we used to fill 3 large trash barrels with all of our leftover food and garbage. We learned how to save untouched, unwrapped food and recycling our trash. Now students can have the extra food they need if they need it, and we have less trash.
At Shelter Rock, we learn. We used acquired skills and knowledge to transform life for self and positivity influence the lives of others.
Our class affirmation.
I am a kindergarten student. I am strong, unique, smart, and important. I am responsible for my own actions. I will make good choices. I will choose to be safe, kind, brave, and honest. I will do great things. My teacher loves and believes in me. I love the team.
I am a leader. I am unique. I am confident. I am amazing. I am respectful. I am eager. I am loved. I am a lifelong learner. I am intelligent. I am team. Lucarelli.
Yes, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
I might do that last affirmation myself. All these questions.
Does anyone have questions? I just wanted to say something before we close. Assistant Principal Bradley and Principal Pacheco, I want to thank you both for joining us this evening. I can't stop saying great things, enough great things about you. You're a very committed and dedicated staff that you have at Shelter Rock School. And you guys have the perfect trifecta because then you also have a very supportive PTO and parent group. So we're very proud of everything that we do at Shelter Rock. We're very proud that the two of you have formed this dynamic duo on behalf of the district. We continue to try to do everything we can to serve the Shelter Rock community. So we are all, I can tell you, we are all proud and happy here at district office on the board for the first time getting to see you together here at the board meeting. We are continuing to look forward to great things that I know is going to come from Shelter Rock. Can't thank you enough for putting together this presentation for us tonight. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
Before
Principal
you go-
Pacheco, you almost got it. One more thing.
Yes. Sorry. I just wanted to say I was honored to have all three of my children go through Shelter Rock School. And we're proud Shelter Rock Eagles. And it was there where they got their educational base and that level of learning that they've taken with them. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody. I see some very familiar faces in the audience who've had one, two, or all three of my kids. But I want to thank you for all that you do and continue to do for our children. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Teresa?
Thank you. How many full-time teachers are at Shelter Rock?
So we do have 27 general education teachers. We have altogether, putting together with the ESL team, with our special ed teachers, we have around 40 certified staff members.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Again, thank you on behalf of the board, and I hope to see you when the spring comes and it's not so cold. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelter Rock.
We're gonna move right into our presentation here tonight. I would like to make a little change as we go through the presentations. I'm gonna ask you, we'll start out with 2 questions. You would raise your hand with the chair. You could give me your 2 questions, and then we'll move around to everyone that's on the board that has the opportunity to ask a question. And I'm gonna ask you to be mindful and polite to each other. We just had a school come, and those children are talking about being polite and courteous to one another. And they're gonna see us sit as adults and can't be polite to each other. That's not a good representation. So I'm gonna ask you to raise your hand. I will put your name down, and if I overlook you, I have the vice chair to nudge me and say, well, someone is over this side. I'm gonna ask you to ask your questions, if it's okay with our superintendent, as we go along. This is a workshop, and I know we usually hold our questions to the end, but I'm gonna ask you to, do your questions then, if it's okay with the superintendent. And if it's something that he can't answer right then, he will definitely get back to you. So at this point, I'm going to turn the workshop over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Is it okay that John also come up here?
Sure, certainly. John.
Last time. And good evening, everyone, and thank you, Board Chair Cooper. So I want to start by sharing John, if you can join us out there. Mr. Spang left there's answers to our January 3rd meeting at everyone's desk tonight. Those responses are really in response to some of the questions that came up at our January 3rd meeting. And this handout is also in response to some recommendations that the board made to fold into our presentation. So the thought was we would, in this handout, John, I'm going to ask you to walk the board through this. Instead of you trying to find those updates in the PowerPoint, John is going to walk you through this handout that was on your desk, and we'll just kind of walk you through what those updates are. And as we go through the presentation, you'll see evidence of that throughout the presentation. So, John, would you mind taking a minute to do that first?
So, can you hear me okay? And so a few of the things are just confirmation of what we've done. The first one there, if you recall, the salaries for our tutors had not been for many years in the line for salaries. They had appeared in the 300 lines, as we call them, and we've moved that up. You'll see that in one of the slides, called the money slide, as superintendent gets into his presentation, but we've made that change. It's about $4 million, and we've also restated the prior year so that things are comparable. We also, we had not calculated the cost. We plan to move, we plan to occupy the Cardis building in late spring, and we put some money in for the high school and middle school teachers who will be working there to pack their classrooms up before they leave. This will be right after the end of classes in June. That's something we typically do. Most recently, we did that with kindergarten teachers who moved over to St. Joe's in Brookfield for a year. Once before school starts, of course, they'll come back and they'll unpack. But that'll be in the next budget, the 25-26 year. So that's been added. We also got some live quotations for the tent rental that we spoke to about at the high school for next year, primarily to serve meals with our cafeteria just being too small for the number of kids. So the annual cost, or the 10-month cost for that tent rental, we estimated $144,000. That's been built in. It actually be 2 tents. You could call them wedding-style tents with the flaps that come over and the doors and things like that. And then we'll need a couple of folks in there to monitor the lunch periods when the students are in there. So we've built in a para-educator, 0.5 or half-time para-educator, one for each of the 2 tents that will be there, a total of $35,000. You asked about a staffing history and we call it a new position analysis. And as you look through your handout there, what we've called, well, it's not on here, but the next page is a table that says staffing history. That's a table that the city asks us to do every year when we send our materials over in February. And you can see there by a couple different categories, teachers, special ed teachers, paras, clerical, custodian, and so forth. But the history there goes back 6 or 7 years, and you can see what's transpired over time. A new position analysis would appear later. Yep, the next page. We took all of the positions that you've been hearing about, the new ones, put them on in a landscape format. It's called Requested New Positions 24-25. I've tried to group them by level, so you can see all of the high school positions there. They come from different budget drivers, but here they are in one place. And you know, as one of our messages, as you've been hearing, is the surge in enrollment at the high school that's here now and will continue to grow. So you see that the staffing that we're asking you to approve is primarily at the high school, and we'll talk more about that. The driver category appears over on the far right of that table. There's some more there. An expenditure history analysis, that's something that city also asks us to prepare. This is the usual format that they get theirs in. These pages appear in the mayor's budget book that comes out in late March and goes to the city council. These have been, these same pages have been used for many years. ECS funding and an enrollment comparison report, that's exhibits 4 and 5. Exhibit 4, that data is a replica of a page that for many years here you received in your budget book. It's not quite formatted the same way we'll do that, but this was the data that you'd often get. It talks about numbers of students in different categories, free and reduced lunch, or things like that. There's some economic statistics there as well that we were used to getting, an equalized grand list of median household income, where we compare to some other cities and towns. I was asked today, why are those in there? Those are the ones that historically have been in your book, so at least for tonight, we went back with the same ones. You can see the ECS grant, the educational cost sharing, spread out there. That is where our Alliance grant lives. When we get our ECS allocation, it includes the Alliance amount. We can talk about that a little bit more too. You also, there's an enrollment comparison. Again, this is a city page. What's different about this is it shows our grade level configurations, elementary, middle, and high school, both historically and then a 3-year projection from our demographers there. When we talked about the next page, the budget drivers, last time it was sort of an overview, and here's the breakout you asked for that shows more item by item what's in those drivers. I've also described those a little bit. I won't go through each one now. You'll see some of that in the presentation coming up, and some notes over there on the side just to help understand how we put those together. So those are the budget drivers. And last, we wanted to give you call it a full financial summary. It's a page, it's a pie chart You can see the ESSER grant in red. That's the big story of the budget you'll see. But you can see our grants, our general fund coming together on that chart. So those are the questions from last time.
And I think I'll take this opportunity to ask if there are any questions about your handout for John or how you view the presentation, which frankly is capturing many of the things John just talked about.
Michelle?
Thank you. So John, I just want to be clear, we got the new numbers in, so we're looking at like 79,000 more for the tents and the staffing at Broadview, because I think originally last meeting it was 100,000 for the cafeteria tents and supervision. So is that my assumption?
Yeah, the tents come to 144,000,
Right.
and the supervision 35,000. So you're right,
So there's an
179.
increase of almost
Right.
80,000.
So Michelle, at the last meeting, we had estimates. There was some requests for us to get actual quotes. And so they've been updated now with the actual quotes.
And then I just have, the other question is, I'm looking at the student enrollment, I think you just highlighted the page towards the end.
I believe
You
it's the
projected,
second to last one.
exhibit 5, you wrote down?
Yes.
Projected 24-25 enrollment you had is 12,188. Are we talking about 12,000, was it 223? Why is that number, or what is the number?
Okay. For the projected there, I was just taking the SLAM report from the last demographic study. I think the numbers you'll see in the presentation, those are really what we think are going to happen. And you know, before these go over to the city, they'll be, everything will match and they'll agree. I think here, what I was more trying to do was show you the history coming up to this rather than pinpoint 3-year projections.
Can we maybe
Good
just
point.
update that, only because, you know, it's always kind of a moving number, and it looks like we're kind of sticking with 12,223, right? So if they could match, that would be great.
They will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Janelle, we're doing 2 questions and then 1 round, okay?
You have a good reputation. John, on your,
And could you speak in your microphone, because we cannot hear.
I'm not sure how this works, but the on your first page, where your item number 2 and item number 3, if I add this cost of 35,000 on the other, I don't know how, is this working? Just push the button. This totals some 215,000. Is this to be construed that it's additional monies from what we've been told, or is this just a breakout of something that's been incorporated?
It's some additional, I believe a week or so ago, we were showing $100,000 for the tents. We weren't showing anything for the supervision or nor anything for the moving costs. But these really are 2 different drivers. The budget drivers are 2 different things. The moving cost, that's to occupy the academy in the late spring, April. Actually, that will be for work that's done in June to move in. The tents and the supervision, we need those things this year for the enrollment, so we would erect those tents this August coming up for the supervisions.
So part of the $250,000 that I referred to, some of that expenses, the big part of that, or half of that, would be for the current year being the tents, and the other 100,000 would be additional monies to be added to your proposed budget for next year. Is that correct?
This is all for the 24-25 budget, just so you know.
So then,
So we just want to make sure we're saying the same thing.
yeah, okay, that's what I'm trying to clarify. And so would I look to assume that whatever numbers you had of the previous presentations and the total cost, would that number increase by $200,000?
Well,
In other words, in previous
yes. So,
conversations, you had presentations, you had a number, I forget what it was, 178 or
Yeah.
176. Are those numbers now being adjusted upward because of these additions?
they are.
They are?
Yes.
Okay, so to be corrected. The other thing is, sort going out of order. On your, next to your last page, where you referred to budget drivers, okay, I'd like to see a total on there.
Sure, it's about 18.5 million, but we can put that.
Got it. Okay, and I keep saying that we look at presentations where you say you have incremental costs of $28 million and we're only counting for $18 million. So your schedule basically, for clarity purposes, I feel should be total.
It's a good suggestion, thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa?
I do.
And then,
Thank you. I just have a quick question about the out-of-town students. I don't recall getting the latest figure on that for this academic year.
I'm sorry, Teresa, when you say out-of-town students?
The students that come to the magnet school, is it?
Yes, you mean in terms of, I just want to make sure I understand the question.
The number, the rate was declining the last year or two, coming from out of town to Danbury. I didn't recall hearing the current number.
Enrollment declining, yes. We can report on that, but we can certainly provide an update on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Am?
There's just a comment, John, on section 2, part 2 here, is that supposed to be probably an error type order, or is that 24 or 25? Should be 25.
24, thank you.
Thank you. Juanita?
Third page, it is the staffing history.
Yes.
And is there any way that we can detail, please? You have the descriptions, the all others.
I think we can, sure.
Okay. I can tell you that I'm looking for, I see under administration, I see superintendent, assistant superintendent, the principals and assistant principals, directors, coordinators. And we jump to special ed tutors, but I don't know if we're missing something in the all other. Would that be like administrative assistants?
Safety advocates would be one that would be in there. They'd be primarily non-certificated positions. I think I'd rather take a look at them.
So I'm specifically looking for where our other administrative positions come in?
Many of those are in the director and coordinator line, but there could be some other, as a working foreman or something of that nature. IT supervisor could be down in that whole line.
Maybe I can just speak with you specifically on the next page, new positions.
Yes.
And where we have our site administrators for our West Campus.
Yes.
And that's for the move, if I'm not mistaken. Our .5 would be
yes,
the 3 month.
You know, it's the phrase, the devil's in the details. And when we take the building in April, and there's still going to be a lot to do. Student schedules, organizing things. It's a big deal to start a school. It's all the little things, and including the staffing and all of that. So we need someone who can do all that really before August, and if not before July. So we envision some staff getting things ready for August, getting ready to welcome back the teachers and so on. We're not quite sure yet exactly what those positions will be or how, but we do need some leadership beginning in late spring.
And did we have that listed as a 3-month position, right? April, May, and June?
That's, the budget is built, that person, there would be a person for 3 months heading up each of the schools, the middle school and the academy.
And so I guess my comment is within our district, we have a number of positions in which we have divided their buildings.
Right.
And I don't know if that had been perhaps a thought by the cabinet that, you know, we've split positions to different buildings and assignments and so forth, that we might have some administrative positions that we could have used for those 3 months, you know, dividing them.
Those discussions will ramp up in the next few months, but we knew we needed some leadership there. I estimated it this way. I'm sure we'll be keeping you informed along the way. From Kevin. Okay.
Teresa?
Back to number 2. The building is going to be finished this June, 2024?
No.
I thought you said that was the one, not 2025 yet. Did I misunderstand that?
Oh, I'm sorry. At the end of the budget year, I'm going to correct myself.
Yeah, that's, I thought.
That will be in June at the end of the budget year.
Well, it's 2025. Thank you.
It is.
Thank you.
Michelle?
I just have one question on the ECS grant funding. You just mentioned the alliances, the 45,684 and some change. What is under the alliance grants? Because last meeting you had said it included the alliance Title I and the IDA grants. Is that what we're talking about when we're looking at this line item?
No. So the ECS, the educational cost sharing, that's the basic way the state of Connecticut aids public education. It's an elaborate formula. I know parts of it, but it's complicated. For alliance districts, one of the ways the state tries to level the playing field between cities and towns, some able to afford more than others, is with the Alliance grant. And in our case, this year, it's about $22 million. And it's an odd way that they pay that and count it. Most grants are not included in your state aid check, so to speak. This particular grant, and only this grant, the Alliance grant, is included in these ECS estimates that you see in the governor's budget and you hear about. So the $45 million you see there, this year, 22 has come to us and for our programs, primarily full-day kindergarten is funded that way. But the rest of it goes to the city. It's a general revenue, just like the casino money that comes in, or the town aid road and things like that. And the city finance department and council use that to help pay for things, including education. The other grants you mentioned, the Title I, Perkins and so on, you'll hear some more in the presentation. Those are not funded through the state aid. Some come from the state, some come from the federal government up through the state.
So when we get to that slide, you can break that down a little bit when we get to
You'll see it,
slide.
yes. You'll see it
Thank
in
you.
a few minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Janelle?
Go for my second round of 2 questions. John, on the page 24, 25, requested new positions.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask that the categories be subtotaled in dollars, come up with a grand total of the dollars. You have a recap of the FTEs but I think it would help
Yeah,
if you had the comparable dollars.
yes.
The other thing, would there be a flow of this schedule, does this schedule support anything that we're going to be seeing tonight in your presentation? In other words, are we going to be able to flow, does this support any of these numbers here just in more detail?
Yes, it does.
You'll be able to
So-
identify that?
So what John was trying to accomplish tonight was make it clear that all of the updates in the presentation, which is like 30 plus slides, he extracted this to say, this is new information that we've added into the presentation, and he wanted to zero in on that new information that's been added to the presentation specifically. But we will see everything from last week, from the preliminary budget, plus what you see here in this beautiful presentation that we're going to show.
Just as long as we can see the connection.
Yes, yeah.
On that. That's good. Thank
If it's
you.
not, that's another problem.
Yeah. And just final question is on the enrollment history. When I look at this at first blush, and we make a lot of conversation, we have a lot of dollars that are spent in the category called enrollment. When I look at this, there's nothing really that pops up to me that's a significant increase. So I think we're going to have to be a little bit more educated as to what the concern of the enrollment is. Is the concern over the increase, I think in your slides, of over the 8 years, the impact that the collective 800 students had from that point to today, what it has on the district? Because when you look at the numbers here, it's not jumping up and supporting that there's anything drastic. It's just I'm trying to play devil's advocate for somebody looking at the slide and you present this and they say, well, I don't see any big deal. I think I know what you're getting at in terms of the effect on enrollment, but I just want to play devil's advocate and give you that question. Thank you.
Margie, on the page for new positions, just a question. We had a number of positions we talked about earlier this week of positions that were not filled this school year. Are those rolled over to this new position?
No.
They're rolled over because they're already budgeted.
Are they in these
So we don't,
numbers?
no,
Oh,
we don't
that's
count
all,
them
yeah.
as positions.
Okay, that's what I was, okay.
Thank you for asking.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. So we will move on to the presentation, which is on the screen. Dr. Seelig is going to help you with the slides. I want to share with the board there are kind of natural transitions in the slides, and so at that point I will break if there are any questions in this group, or I think it may be appropriate if we don't want to wait until the end. And so I will just get started. And so our first slide appropriately speaks to our vision and mission statement for the district. And I think as a team, as a board, as a community, we need to be reminded certainly that we aspire to advance all of our students to their highest potential. And that, of course, requires investment, that requires planning, that requires strategic planning. And we do this in partnership with community, with staff, with the board to make these things happen. Our true north as a district, and I want to applaud Principal Pacheco and her team for putting together a video, and our schools have been doing a great job this year on spotlights, referencing our portrait of the graduate, making those connections to what learning looks like in their classrooms, kind of in light of our true north as a district. But these are the characteristics in which we want the skills that we want our kids to leave their very schools with. And this is, I think this continues to serve as a reminder of why we are here. This next slide, our district, begins to really talk about, of course, I think every district feels that they are unique right here in Connecticut. but we're going to speak to some reasons why we truly are unique in the state of Connecticut. Our profile. So yes, in this data is as of January 9th, 2024. We have 12,223 students, 13 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 1 high school, that's changing soon, and 2 alternative programs. 13.7% of our students have an IEP, and 47.1% of our students identify as high needs. I'm going to go back to high needs in a second, and this is the thing that truly makes us and distinguishes us from the rest of the districts in the state of Connecticut, and that is 33.3% of our students are multilingual learners. 47.1% of our students are high needs, which is a combination of being a multilingual learner, being eligible for free and reduced lunch, having an IEP, so any combination of those things identifies you as a high need student. Strategic plan and district priorities. And so the board approved in 2022 these 6 priorities, and identifying these 6 priorities is critically important to move the district forward. So with the focus on teaching and learning, staff development, talent acquisition, school climate, focusing on school climate, meaningful collaboration, and resource allocation. Next one, Mike. Enrollment growth, and Mr. Ginelli had talked about this a couple minutes ago, and really asking the question out loud, like, why is enrollment growth such a issue, challenge, a thing here in Danbury? And so you'll see from 2017-18, a little over 11,400 students at that time, and at the time of the submission to the state of Connecticut, 12,126 students when we submitted our data to the state of Connecticut on October 1st. And I think in a previous chart we had shared with the board and the community, that was plus 630 something students over that 17-18 year span. Again, what truly makes us unique from the rest of the districts in the state of Connecticut, we have our biggest elementary school is, and you heard Principal Pacheco tonight saying they had 500 plus students at their school, 631 students in the district. Typically means you need a new school erected in the school district. And that's exactly what the demographers have told us we have needed. And this is dating back a couple of years ago. Projections, with the projections matching our actual growth, it really speaks to, again, why we are so unique in the state of Connecticut. And I know we had another board member tonight point out that the numbers of the projector of the demographer are actually under what our real number is right now. So John had included the projections in for 24, 25, and beyond. But Michelle, to your point, we've outperformed the projections, which is what we typically do here. And we're about 200 over those projections that are in there. So we will definitely adjust those numbers. I think we had I think the demographer projected we would be at about 3,700 in September for the high school, where we are, based on our numbers, projecting over 3,900 in the high school. Obviously, we'll have something more definitive as we get closer to the summer, but those are the numbers that we are seeing right now. The next slide. This is also about enrollment growth, but this is specifically for multilingual learners and our special ed students. And again, going back to 2017-18 and up to date to 23-24, you will see significant growth from a little over 3,000 students to over 4,400 students to date here in the district. And then that gray bar represents in 23-24. We've had 118 students who identified multilingual learners since the October 1 submission. No one in the state of Connecticut is growing at the rate that we are. There is another district who is also growing at a high percentage. You will see in some subsequent slides, no one is coming close to the overall number as we are here in Danbury. So, Chairperson Cooper, I'll pause here, see if there are any questions in this transition.
Mr. Ginelli?
On the slide for the enrollment growth,
Yes.
would it be, as you've done in other years, would it be advantageous to show the state of Connecticut? So it shows more meaningful where the Danbury growth is increasing and the overall state is decreasing.
We will add that in. That is missing this year, you're absolutely right.
And the other thing, as I mentioned the other day, when you look at the next slide, the enrollment in the multi-language learners as well as special education, there was just recently, a week or two ago, a report that came out, I think by the State School 101 Project, that had a nice write-up on this, and it indicated that Danbury was, out of all the districts in Connecticut, 169 districts, Danbury was the second largest district behind Bridgeport in the enrollment of multi-language learners. And so, as I said the other night, if you put a chart together of the multi-language learners as well as the special ed kids, and a bar chart showed, and I think that came out at 51% of the total population. What I'm trying to get at is to build the narrative that the public has to understand is what you're up against. You as a superintendent and your administrators and your teachers, what they're up against by the effect of the enrollment, irregardless of to the naked eye, it doesn't look like it's, you know, every year it's a large peak. We only had about 3 years that you peak. But it has an impact collectively, but also the impact of the classroom. Having 51% of your classroom being serviced by children that have special needs, and the impact that has on the district and you to go out and find different type of teachers that are going to fill that void, I think strengthens our support as to why you're looking for this additional money in these particular areas. So what I'm trying to do is build the story relative to the graphs and tie them into your financial numbers so that people understand behind your numbers what this classroom looks like. We have a tendency of making things look too easy. You know, I keep saying you guys do a good job in you know, doing lemonade out of lemons. And so the general public, you know, in years you said, okay, you did so great, why do you need this particular, you know, increase? Well, it's on the back of the administrators and the teachers and the students. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is some sort of a narrative that ties these things in as to what the classroom is, and then deal with the numbers to say that we're supporting that by this particular edition or this particular law.
Mr. Ginelli, I appreciate the feedback, and we heard you loud and clear last night. When we went to go begin to think about what that slide would look like, we realized we couldn't put it together too quickly, because we have some students who might identify as an MLL student, but they may also identify as a special needs student. And so the numbers will not be as easy to put together as the 3 different numbers that you saw on the paper. So it's just going to take a little bit more work for us to identify the students who have dual identifications to figure out how we would chart that. So it'll just...
Yeah, right. There are some categories which will include both.
That's right. So it'll just take a little bit more time, but we understand the rationale.
Yeah, it's just the concept and rationale so that we educate the public and the people that we're making the presentation to as to what it's like to be in the school and what you need in order to service these particular needs and also go ahead.
Thank you.
Michelle, I'm going to ask board members again, and I'm going to repeat this until we all get on the same page. We have people that are in the audience that cannot hear us. We're taping this, and people are watching that they cannot hear us. Okay? So please, your microphone is not going to bite you. Just turn it on, ask your questions so we can hear you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you, John, for adding these additional graphs, just based on our discussion we had last time, where I'm also kind of piggybacking off what Rich is saying, if we know that there's 100 students coming and our demographic is, 30% or maybe 40% multi-language learner, what is actually enrolling might be a very different picture where it's 7, let's say, multi-language learners out of 10. And you know what I mean? So actually inverted. We're looking at 16,037 for an English learner, and we want to take into consideration multi-language learner is 48,000. Special needs is 72,000 per student. So those numbers, depending on how we consider it, it's not just the 16,000. So just so that we're prepared, because we always seem to be a little bit short trying to get the resources for those students, or in our minds realize what those numbers I think really mean. So thank you very much for being here.
Teresa?
Michelle touched on this, and it's a good point. The projected additional 300 students we're supposed to get, is there a way we can qualify them as to how many are MLL students? Is there any way to find that out? I mean, we seem to know a specific number, but can we get to know more of what's coming and be prepared?
All right, so we have 300 additional students coming up to the high school. So Broadview Middle School, that enrollment bubble is at Broadview Middle School this year. And so that bubble will be moving up to the high school. And so we have the demographics of the students that we know of right now. We can't necessarily make projections of how they will identify. We certainly have the projections of an idea of the kind of numbers that might be coming in. And so what Dan does, as an example, he will kind of leave space in classes in the event students move in after the schedule has kind of been put together. But we don't necessarily have an idea of who the kids are going to be when they come in and how they will identify. Just to make sure I understand that, like, that's how you're asking.
So it's strictly from within the system we're getting that money?
Right now, yes, it's moving up to the high school, the middle school going up to the high school. So that 3,900 that we're preparing for at the high school is enrollment growth when the middle school is coming right now. Plus the students, of course, that he has.
You want to continue, Superintendent?
Yes, please. So the next slide is the district reference groups, and oftentimes in this board meeting we talk about hors d'oeuvres. And the next slide, slide 10, is a definition about the district reference groups. And the rationale about this whole section is really beginning to build the case for what our districts look like who are in our district reference group, how they are being funded, how the town funds them, what type of resources they are receiving from the state, and then that, and kind of getting a look at what that means for Danbury. And so the DRGs, district reference groups, are a classification system that groups local and regional public school districts together based on similar socioeconomic status of their students. So this was developed by the Connecticut State Department of Education. The DRGs have not been officially updated since they were first released in 2006, although it is my understanding they have actually updated it, but I don't think it's been released by the state yet. Yes,
Is the state going away from the DRGs?
that is our understanding,
Okay.
Yes, that's our understanding. The next slide, DPS versus the DRGs. And what we mean by that is this is how we compare against other districts who are in the same demographic reference group. And so I just want to bring your attention to the table. And here are some of those districts who are in our DRG right now. And that is Ansonia, Derby, East Hartford, Meriden, Norwalk, Norwich, Stamford, and West Haven. And in this bubble plot that you will see, some of the board members who were here on the previous term, I've talked about the Next Generation Accountability Index. I had described that as kind of our report card, where this is kind of developed in various areas, from growth of our students, SAT scores, graduation, how our students are doing in phys ed, how our students are doing with access to the arts. And so it's a number of different indicators. And when you look at this chart that's in the bubble chart that's in front of you, from north to south is the accountability index going from 50 up to 70, and going from left to right or east-west is the amount per student that is spent on a student. And so really, there are two points that we want to get across when sharing this with you. One, we are very responsible stewards of the taxpayers' money here. We spend a little over $16,000 per student here at Danbury, which is $6 more than Meriden as of the publication of this chart. And you will see when looking at the accountability index, we score or rate at a 67. And this is if you go to the school and state finance project. This information is also can be found on the State Department of Education, but also on the state finance project. And you will see Danbury at a score of 67. And then you will also see districts like Norwalk, like Stanford, at over $21,000 per student. And then when you look for the corresponding color, and so for example, you'll see Norwalk at close to, you'll see their index is at 69. You'll see Stanford's index is at 65. And so despite the fact that they're spending $5,000 more per student, their index is really in the same ballpark as ours. I am here to share with you this evening, we cannot continue to count on our staff to continue to carry the burden that is in front of us. So, for years we have continued to enjoy the works of our administrators and our staff across the district. We continue to be applauded for the growth that our kids continue to exhibit, and these are the outcomes that we look at every year. But times are different in the district, not just in Danbury, of course, it's in all districts. But the other districts has resources that we do not. And this is really just the beginning page of why we need to make sure we are investing in the district, because we cannot continue to expect these kind of outcomes with declining investment in funds for staff in schools. On the next slide, demographics and per pupil spending. This graph, again, this is part of EdSite, and this is a State Department of Education reference. This is from 21-22 school year. This is the latest one that was available by the state. But again, this is Danbury Public Schools versus its DERGs. And so you will see, and this is really just a demographic breakdown, 52.5% of Danbury students identify as high need in 21-22. Our multi-language learners during that year was 31.6%. Students with disabilities or special ed students, 13.9%. And students who identified as Black or Indigenous people of color was at 75.3%. And so you will see how we match up against the other districts who are in our DERG. And then you will also see how the per pupil spending for us versus those same districts who are in our DERG. I'll just give you a moment to observe this chart. And then the next slide, again, going back to 2017 to 2023, and again, beginning to really show how different we are from the other 168 districts in the state of Connecticut. So since 2017, specifically, we have had over 1,000 multi-language learner students in Danbury Public Schools. And while you can see the count in our other districts that look like us, look most like us, and certainly Norwalk and Stanford have experienced growth, but nowhere at the level that we have. And then you can see the same, also West Haven has experienced growth as well, but certainly not like we have. And there are other charts when looking at the entire state of Connecticut. There are places like New Milford, for example, who has experienced significant growth amongst their multi-language learners. And so percentage-wise, they're off the charts. But in terms of numbers, of course, the district is not so big. But even with districts like New Milford, who's experiencing significant growth with this population, just been talking about sheer numbers. There's no one in terms of percentage across the state in numbers like Danbury Public Schools. In the next slide, this is a snapshot of 23-24 operating budgets for Danbury, Norwalk, and Stanford. And you will see the operating budget for Danbury at in the magenta or purple bar at $150 million, Norwalk at $226.6 million, and Stanford at $313 million. I believe Stanford has about 2,000 more students than us, and I think Norwalk has about 1,000 or 2,000 less than us, as we're at about 12,000. I think Norwalk's a little over 11,000 or high 10,000. But you will see, just looking at the high need numbers, the numbers reflecting students with disabilities, again, no one looks like us when it comes to NML students. But the similarities are sort of.
Mr.
Yes, Ms.
Marshall, before we move, could we ask the question before we move into the
Absolutely,
funding source?
absolutely. Perfect time.
If no one has any question, then we can move on to the funding source. Are there any questions? Could you speak into your mic, okay?
I don't think the mic is working, so keep pushing the button.
Help is on the way.
Thank you. Kevin, as a suggestion, do you think in your explanation what you gave to us as your audience as to what the interpretation and the purpose of putting these graphs together, you think on the graph attached to it would be a narrative so that a reader understands the interpretation of these numbers and the importance of it. So when I tried to spend today to look for other years of the next generation accountability. I couldn't find it. But if we can get a couple of 3 years and it works in our favor, that shows that we constantly increase on that average. I think that would be another feather in our cap, so that we're good stewards of a return on investment is prudent. But again, explaining to the audience what the purpose of the graphs are. In the demographics that we have by the DIRGs, with the exception of the local language, we're all in about the same groups. But I mean, there could be comments made on that. But essentially, as you're speaking to us and giving us the education, I look to, when I read something, is to say, okay, let me understand it further if it's not applied, because I don't have the background and the knowledge to interpret it as you do. And I think perhaps when you go before and give it to the council particularly, it helps educate them in basically what you're trying to say, and enlightens them a little bit more as to what the significance of these numbers are from our perspective. So just a thought.
Thanks, Mr. Joe.
Teresa? Louise?
Thank you. On the slide where you are comparing the operating budgets to Norwalk and Stanford, I think last night Terry had mentioned that those cities were a little bit not in sync with Danbury. Is it possible for us to get some comparisons with possibly Meriden or something that's more comparable to Danbury?
We can, Louisa. I just want to share, however, of the comparable districts, and I'm just going by the definition of DIRG, because the group that we're in, all the districts are here. And the two districts who are most like us in terms of size and demographics are Norwalk and Stanford. And we have no problem also adding Meriden or substituting districts. But when we put all the districts side by side, the two districts that are going to continue to look most like us are Norwalk and Stanford. But I'm happy to also add Meriden because they're here. Their per pupil spending certainly is more in line with ours, that is for sure. But their size and scope, they're not the same. But we certainly can add that. But I just want you to know the rationale why we have these two, because they are most like us in size and scope for sure.
Teresa?
On that same vein, when you say the demographics are the same, are you talking strictly the students, the educational system, as opposed to the total population
So,
of these respective cities?
so
Yeah, like what are the points of the similarities?
Mike, can you go back to the DERB slide? So the district reference groups, they are grouped together based on socioeconomic status of the students, which of course means the parents. And that's how the districts are grouped. And in this case, Meriden, similar to us obviously because we're in the same group, but just in terms of the size of the city, obviously it's not as big as ours. That's why the district is not as big as ours. Norwalk and Stanford is. But again, we can certainly add some more comparisons so the board can see some other numbers side by side.
Thank
No.
you. Mr. Jamil?
Kevin, I tend to think the budget on the operational budgets and comparisons, personally, I would eliminate it. I think it opens up more questions we would have to defend somebody saying, okay, provide me with number of students, population, tax rates, and stuff like that. We get into areas where we shouldn't be. We're education here. We're not looking to see what size of our budget compares to Norwalk's budget in the city. So it might be something that would open up. What I'm trying to do is prevent your presentation from being side railed to get to another aspect of it, as we've seen before, where something triggers something and we get off the beaten path. I don't think this really supports any of the things you're trying to make without going into somebody being more argumentative or more inquisitive and say it's not relevant.
So I do think it's, I'm sorry, it's good that you want to say something.
And I agree with Mr. Janelli. I think that's up to the superintendent and our finance director to come in, and if they think this is relevant for our budget, they make the decisions.
I'm not telling you to do it, it's just a suggestion.
Just let me finish. They'll make the decision. If they think it should go in there, then they should do it. That's what happened, and the finance director and his staff. So, that's the only thing that I want to say.
So, Louisa, thanks for the feedback, number one, this evening. And I know, Teresa, you'd probably also like to see some additional districts in there as well. So we're happy to make those additions. I think it's important, however, for the board and the community to have a reference point, because without one, you would not know what it takes to run a school district of our size. And so the point that, and Mr. J, to your point, we will make sure we preface this section of the rationale why we're putting this information together. And so I think that was lost in here. And so we'll make sure we add that. Like, this is why these 4 or 5 slides are so important. But I need our community, I need our board to understand, typically, these are the costs. This is what it costs to run a house. And if you've never ran a house before, we would not know. And at least if we have some reference points other than being 169 out of 169, know what this really looks like in terms of a total budget, we have a better idea. So that's really the rationale, and I'll make sure the story flows in a way so that folks understand why we're sharing these slides. Because the last thing I'm trying to do is make it look like bang on the table, look how much Norwalk is getting in Stanford. That's not what it's about. But what it is about is just trying to, for folks to understand districts our size, this is what it typically costs for districts this size of Danbury Public Schools.
And if you can provide statistical information relative to student body or population, stuff that has some sort of relevance. Because if you have a student body in one city that's 15,000 students, one would automatically conclude it costs more money to do that. So that's why I said, I mean, it may open up, but if you provide more information, it could be good. It
Okay.
just opens up more of a narrative and takes us off to a different.
Michelle?
I just want to say that I agree with including the information because I think that these numbers that are coming through, I mean, even for me, who's been sitting on the board for 2 years, it's kind of enlightening to realize that the students that are coming, if you've got 100 students enrolling, most of them are multi-language learners, and I don't think that we really understand what that cost is. And we're looking at other schools, and I want to say, I think I'm reading for the first time, we might be 168 out of 169.
$6.
That's improvement. That's what we're looking for. So I just, I know that we don't want to confuse the public with information, but I really think this information really helps to paint the picture of what we're looking at in the district as far as expense. So, thank you.
Thank you. So there are no more questions on this section. The next area is called grant funding, and John is going to review this section. I think this really addresses not all of the questions about grants, but I think it will provide an overview of how the grants were spent, how much just by categories and classifications, and just overall, the first slide really begins to just talk about the mission and kind of goals of each grant. And so John will get started.
And, I think too, just to explain, you're seeing more of an emphasis on grants in our presentation this year. And there are a couple reasons for that. One is the biggest reason our budget is going up is because of grants, and one grant in particular, losing the ESSER grant. So we also thought it was important for you to take a look inside our grants so you can see what we look at and what's really going on with the grants. We thought that was important this year. When you add our grants to our operating budget, we're up over 210 million. You'll see in a minute here. But we also want you to know how dependent we are on grants. And when we lose something big like the COVID grant, there really is no place to go when that happens. So the grants themselves, and I know that slide is very small, but the grants are either entitlements or they're competitive. And they originate either with the federal government or the state government. And those governments, when they see a need, they will create a grant to help meet that need. A couple of these have been around really forever. Just picked a couple out. The Perkins grant that's up there, the Carl D. Perkins grant, that started in 1984, almost 40 years ago, and it was to improve industrial arts. At the time, it's been changed a couple times. Now it's for career and technical education, but a very specific purpose. The Title I's you hear about a lot, the title grants as we call them, that started in 1965, 58, 59 years ago. And that was earmarked for what they called economically disadvantaged schools, not school districts, economically disadvantaged schools within those districts. And it was designed to teach math and English in those schools. That's been reauthorized over the years several times. Now it includes STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So they change, but they've been around a long time and do get reauthorized. But the point I'd like to make, and what this chart helps with, is that they're for very special purposes. Each of the grants that are designed, they're not for general purposes, although some have more flexibility than others. I won't go through each of those. You can see them for yourself on there. I think the important thing, and it's hard to read, the second to the last column on the right shows the number of staff members that we have in these grants. See the very first one, the Alliance grant, that's a state grant. 149 staff members are in that grant. That probably, I think all of our kindergarten teachers are in there. That's what we use to go from half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten, the Alliance grant. So that's where they live. But you can see the second grant is the IDEA grant. That's a special education grant. There's 21 staff members in there. I won't go all through them. The Title I mentioned 53 people in the Title I grant itself, and so on and so forth. At the bottom is our magnet school grant. That's a very important grant to us. You can see in the second column, almost $1.6 million comes in from the state to run AIS, and we have 16 staff members, primarily teachers, that are paid with that state money. So that you can see we're dependent on these grants for kindergarten teachers, for AIS, and so on and so forth. Next grant, Mike. Next slide. And so there are a lot of grants. We have 55 grants. And you can see in this slide, what we've just tried to do is highlight the larger ones. As I mentioned there, there's the ESSER right on top. That's the one we're losing. But you can see the Alliance I talked about earlier, 22 million. Those 6 or 7 grants that we've highlighted combined for $43 million. The other 40 or so grants, that brings in another 14 million. Some of those are competitive. We submit an application. If it matches what they're looking for, if it's a good application, we're awarded that grant. Those tend to be smaller grants and not grants that we really think we can count on to sustain themselves over time. Those are the big ones. Mike, you want to next slide? Right, so this takes those same grants, all of our grants, shows you what we're spending it on, and you can see all of the staff members I mentioned. You can see the salary and benefits themselves, almost 42 million of the 57 million in the total grants. So that's a pretty big piece. That's one of the reasons we feel these grants, particularly the ESSER, that in the last few years were a place we could go to finance our growth, to finance the additions at the high school. There are not other grants to go to now. They're all being used, as people might put it one way. But the next slide, I believe, to me, this is the most important slide. When people say to me, John, why is your budget up so high? What's going on? It's that first line. It's that ESSER grant, almost $11 million. And you can see, along with the other 55 grants of 46 million, and our general fund spending level budget for this year, there's over 210 million. But next year we won't have that 10 million as a grant, and that is the major driver as to why the increase is what it is. I think that's it for the slides. Questions on grants?
Michelle?
So looking at the last meeting that we had, for 23-24, we had the grants broken out and totaling $62,500,000. And now it's like $5 million less is what I'm reading now with this new, with the 7 million, did you say? So I did the numbers real quick, and it looks like there's a $5 million difference that gets carried over.
What page was the?
So this is the cliff of last week, of the last meeting that we had, and we had the ESSER grants and all of the other grants totaling 62,500,000. And now we are getting the new numbers, which are 5 million less than what we projected. The only number that seems to really kind of deviate is the other grant number that I brought up, the 34 million that we showed for 21, 22, 22, 23 school year.
Okay.
So we're 5 million less. Is your projection? How are you? Where did we find that money then in this new budget? How did you allocate for it?
A couple of things.
Michelle, are you saying in our projections for 23, 24?
Yeah, in this, the original, I think the one that went to the ad hoc was showing 62,500,000 as available grants that we were looking for 23, 24. And then just, I was comparing that when we received the last week, we were going to be preparing it. It looks like we're 5.5 million short. So I just want to make sure that, because when we, I didn't have an opportunity to go through everything. I was kind of concentrating on the budget, on the grants themselves.
Right.
So there's 5 million short, or 5.5, and I don't know where we're making that up.
So what, the page we're talking about, if I could, we've called that the cliff slide, so let me keep calling it that. We put that together a year ago. Its main purpose was not to provide as fine an estimate or a budget. It was really to alert people that things were about to change. And that the whole point, the point there was to show the ESSER money dwindling over 3 years. The COVID grants, ESSER grants, same thing. One of them, we had 2 years to spend it. This last one, we had 3. So we're just trying to show in general terms what was going on. I'll look at it a little more carefully, but I think we very likely projected some increases in the Alliance grant. At the time, there was talk of speeding up the Alliance formula. We think that there's still a strong possibility that's going to happen. But what you see here are the grants that we have this year, in 23, 24, not an increase. We may have thought it was going to accelerate sooner than we now do. But these slides tonight are based on what I call the award letters. When you put in your application, the state says yay or nay. That's what we're adding up. That's what we're spending.
Okay, so those 5 million that we were considering to be money that we would have in the budget, right? Because that's, we were kind of.
Well, I'd like to go back and look at that
right.
slide again. It's, but I suspect that's what it was.
Oh, yeah, I'm just wondering where do we capture that? Because at the end, we've got new budgets that are totaling 178. I just don't know if you're aware that that number will come down significantly. I know we're going to be asking for 5 million in reserves. I just don't. I don't want to be, surprised later that, oh, we didn't get the funding, because it's only a week or so difference between our projection of 11.4 last week or when we met last.
That's from our book a year ago.
No, I get it. I'm just saying that.
Okay.
$5 million, 5.5. Thank you.
Kate.
John, first of all, I just want to thank you for this slide that talks about the grant spending by category. This is a breakdown, and we can see how much of that is going to salaries and benefits. And those are costs being covered by grants that are really part of our operating as a school. As a school district. So I appreciate that breakdown so that folks can understand that. Can you talk a little bit about the purchase professional services under there? If I remember, there were some positions that may be covered by that category.
Mike, can you go to the slide called grant funding, slide 17? And at the bottom, there's a link for major grant fund summary. Hopefully it works in the presentation. And I'm not sure which grant specifically you may have been referring to.
It's 18.
Sorry, looking at slide 18.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So,
disregard.
Go to 17.
We're spending that. So, purchase professional services, that covers quite a bit of things, including what comes to mind are some areas in technology, some of the other things, some of the other improvements that our Alliance grant provides for. Just by the fact that the Alliance grant is the largest, that's where you find most of these. Some of the other grants are very specific purposes, I hope I described. I might turn to our Assistant Superintendent, Karen Casimiro, if you could, I hate to put you on the spot, but there's some exciting things in that Alliance grant that we're doing.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my list. So just as an example, sorry, just as an example, in Alliance, we have our new leader aspirant program is built in there. We run our Delta program. So if we contract for services or professional development with any outside vendor, generally that falls under that line. TVAL, we'll be doing a new TVAL model in the next year. Any professional development services that we need will come out of that line as well. We've invested in, obviously, a new ESL program, and so there's professional learning, professional development that is involved there. We've had some Power School training that we've done to help our administrators get better with scheduling and learn more about the ins and outs of Power School on the scheduling side. We've had some of our NCAC college and career readiness training in there. So anytime you see purchase of professional services, it's generally us contracting for some level of professional development that either goes with a program that we're rolling out or that is needed to achieve the superintendent's goals.
Yes, Kate.
Just a quick follow-up question on that, Kara. Can you help me understand how to differentiate that between the line that talks about dues, fees, and staff development, please?
Dues, fees.
So I'm looking at that same slide 18, grant spending by category. And their second line on there is dues, fees, and staff development versus the purchase of professional services.
For the 27,000?
Sorry.
I'd like to see if we could bring you a listing of that next time, if it's okay. It's a big number to wing, I think, so
Sure.
if we could.
Yeah.
Mr. Duran?
John, on slide number 16, where you do the grant funding, why is the ESSER $10 million left off this number? And also, I feel it should be included, then footed to total of $57 million, because your following schedule would include the $10 million, and you would have the continuity of having this breakdown showing $57 million into your other schedules.
I'm sorry,
about page
Mr. J, did you
18?
say page 16?
Page 16, I don't see listed ESSER funding.
Oh, with
here
the
$10 million.
description. I see.
Okay, if you look at your other schedules, in your funding, you're including the $10 million.
So we can add ESSER, absolutely, because it is still part of the 23-24 still.
Right, and it's put it so it shows 57. So again, you have a tie-in from one schedule to the other. The next question is on your, stay with me. Oh, page, I'm sorry, I can't see. I think it's page 19. The general fund shows 154. I disagree with that. The general fund is 150. That's the appropriation from the city. Why do we keep flip-flopping from 150 to 154?
The message, what we're trying to say with that slide is that we are together combined over $210 million.
That's a fictitious number. I mean, you're making up numbers. It's not a factual number. The budget for this year is $150 million. That's what you got. You may have a spending issue of 154.
Okay.
That's a different question. What your appropriation is, $150 million. That's the budget. That's what you've been showing on your financial statements. And that's the number that should be here.
We will make the adjustment. You're right.
other questions? Louisa?
I just have a question. So on the $150 million budget that was approved, we knew that the $10.9 million ESSER fund was going away.
Yes.
So what did we do in preparation last year for that money going away? Was there any plan moving forward? Or did we just know it was coming and we were just warning the cliff and just waiting for it to fall?
Well, a year ago, the other ESSER grant, ESSER 2, was about, it was $6 million or so, but it had 15 to 20 positions. We added that into the school budget. That was one of the reasons we were up last year. You'll see that in the staffing history report. I think there were a total of 37 positions we added. Most were from ESSER 2, but we didn't make any specific plans for the ESSER 3. One of the reasons we don't think those positions are really extra or that we can do without them. Some of them, both ESSER grants we've used to help finance our growth, and both with the multi-language learner, but the increases we've seen, those are, many are classroom teachers.
So out of the 10.9, most of this is full-time staff?
There are 80 positions, 73 of which are filled right now. Yeah, that's the primary. I think it might be 7 million, almost 7 million is salaries, and another couple million are the benefit packages.
Thank you.
The next section, Ms. Cooper, is titled Key Budget Drivers. There are 6 budget drivers that the board had seen previously on the 3rd of January, and an additional driver that we have titled Instructional Improvement that I want to be able to walk you through. So slide 22, as a driver, this is one of our biggest ones. And this speaks to ESSER 3 and the staff that we are looking to fold over into our general budget for the 24-25 school year and beyond. So the total for this category is a little over 10.7 million, in which a little over 6.7 million is in staff. The benefits, a little over 1.5. Kelly Services, which is the service that the district has partnered with to provide substitutes for both teachers and paraprofessionals, is at 2.4 as a cost to the district. And the rental cost for 43 Beaverbrook for the front of the building is a little under $50,000 a year. All these things were paid out of ESSER 3, which is expiring, and that is a little over $10.7 million. The next driver, Danbury High School enrollment, which we've talked about, and this area totals at 1.9, a little over 1.9 million. For high school is requested 9 core teachers at 675,000, 5 elective teachers at 375,000, 2.5 paraprofessionals for lunchroom supervision that John had referred to earlier. That's a new addition. The benefit cost for the teachers comes in at $336,000. The tent rental, which is also a new addition to the enrollment change, which John had pointed out earlier, comes in at $144,000. The 4 additional buses, John, I'm not sure if you mentioned, well, we had this originally. The 4 high school buses at $75,000 each comes in at $300,000, and the furniture for the additional kids to the high school at $60,000. The next driver, I think there were a couple of questions about this when John's handout, and certainly also at last meeting. This is for the academies of Danbury, and really these are transitional costs that we are anticipating that will be part of the 24-25 budget. And so to lift and make sure we're ready to open the doors in the summer or August of 25, The recommendation is that we have, at the .5, we hire a high school administrator for Danbury High School for the new campus, and then we also hire a middle school administrator for the new campus, so that those two sites are ready to be open and ready to welcome staff and students in the fall. The benefit costs for those positions are projected to be a little over $20,000 for half a year. The teacher per diem costs, something John also pointed out before we open up the presentation, which is in your packet. We projected that to be a little over $56,000, and this is to make sure that our teachers have time afforded to them to pack their respective rooms for the teachers who would be moving over to the new campus. And then the operating costs to actually run the building when the keys are handed over to us, we are projecting will be an additional cost of about $300,000 from April through June 30th. Startup supplies, just to make sure that the building is ready to go before the July 1 in the new budget, is projected at $19,000, and this is a total of $596,000 for the Academies of Danbury section.
Teresa?
The site administrator for the high school and middle school, is that in addition to principals for each school?
This is a site principal for the academy with 1,000 students. And so this would be an assistant principal in charge of each academy, and then a principal.
And this is an addition?
I want to make sure I understand your question.
The site administrator, is that in addition to the principals?
That would be a principal of the site, and then 2 assistant principals. Each assistant principal is in charge of the academy. And so if you think about the same staffing that we have at Broadview Middle School and Rogers Park Middle School, essentially 1,000 students, there's a principal, 2 assistant principals. We're trying to replicate that same staffing formula, principal, 2 assistant principals. In this case, the 2 assistant principals are in charge of the academy. The staff will report to them, the principal will be in charge of the entire school.
So the site administrator is not a principal?
That is the principal. We just title it site administrator until the building is actually open. So this is getting the building ready.
Oh, so this is just in the spring of 2025?
Right, because the schedule has to be developed, hiring has to be done for the new school, so this person would be charged with that. The middle school and the high school prior to the school starting.
So for 3 months, they're getting $100,000 each?
Well, these are projections right now. I think when we initially put these monies to get this budget together, a .5 suggests that it's half the year. And so it really would be less than a .5 if we're talking for 3 months of the year. So those numbers can be massaged because this is a little high projection for only 3 months.
Thank you.
Lauren?
So the $144,000 for the tents at the high school, does that include heating the tents during the winter and all that?
It does.
Okay, awesome. And then Kelly Services, is that are we continuing with Kelly Services? How is that? Like,
Go ahead, John.
That's what we're budgeting at the moment.
to continue that purchase?
Yes.
Okay.
So for the next slide, page 24, Academies of Danbury, I think we just concluded that one. Page 25 is academic support. And this is a breakdown of something also you've seen earlier. And so this is for Danbury High School, 4 bilingual teachers projected at $300,000, 1 SIOP coach for the high school at $75,000, 4 bilingual paraprofessionals at $140,000. At the middle school, 2 world language teachers at $160,000 projected. For our elementary schools, a bilingual 1.0 SIOP coach, and then 2 bilingual paras for our elementary schools at $70,000. And benefit costs for all the positions above a little over $300,000, coming in at a little over 1.1. And then just a few more slides for drivers. For special education, and on slide 26. 3 special education teachers for the 24-25 school year projected, and 2 additional pupil personnel staff, at an approximate $400,000 number for 24-25 school year. Safety and technology, to address the enrollment growth at the high school and also to maintain the numbers that we added to the middle school for last year. We are projecting 3 additional safety advocates for Danbury High School, and projecting that cost to be $90,000. The local share security grant and technology. Mike, can you speak to those 2 for a second? Because I want to make sure I get this right. I know you have some background.
So the local share of the security grant, this would be for the Raptor system that we've been talking about. We have a state security grant that requires us to, it's basically another reimbursement grant. We would pay it up front, and then we get a 40% reimbursement on that amount. $100,000 would cover roughly our share of that. And then the technology, this is just making our network more robust. It includes additional security measures in light of the breach that we had last year, and just more upgrades as we continue our one-to-one device program. There's just a bigger strain placed on that network. We have to continue to make it stronger.
Mr. Janelle, you want to ask a question?
Sure. Kevin, on your page 25, which is the academic support. This is for the regular school system, correct? That's not.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
that's fine. And the other thing, in my, on page 27, you're talking close to $750 million for technology. I mean, that's a big increase. I mean, is there a way to get more specific breakdown as to what this is?
Yeah, we can provide that. Yeah, we can. And I believe Mike, through facilities, walked the committee through these numbers, Mr. Ginelli. But given we're repurposed as a board, we certainly can use this forum or committee forum to provide a little update on these numbers. Whether it's the local share of the security grant technology, because everyone here may not be aware of the security grant initiatives and grants that we've applied for. And so certainly we're happy to use some subsequent meetings to give a little bit more background on the rationale for these tasks.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm asking for information I wasn't here.
Right, which makes sense.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Louisa?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to the academies of Danbury and the site administrators, these are 2 campuses of 1 high school, am I correct? So it's 2 campuses, it's Danbury High School. Will Dan Donovan be the principal of both campuses? Because I think it's getting confusing because we have principal, administrators, 2 campuses. It's essentially 1 high school with 2 separate campuses and 1 principal, correct?
That is correct. So there's 1 principal of record with additions. I mean, I'm going to be frank, we should have 2 high schools, right? And so we have a building on 2 separate sides of town. And Principal Donovan will be the principal of a campus, still close to 3,000 students. And we will have another school on the west side of town with 1,000 students, maybe more, depends on what happens. And we are envisioning someone leading both academies as per the model, and then 1 person in charge of the campus. Similar staffing model, as I was mentioning earlier, no different from what we have in Broadview Middle School, what we have at Rogers Park Middle School. So that's what we're trying to accomplish in this case with the new. And so there's similar, we've shared the kind of org chart with the board again, and probably would be appropriate for us to come back again, given that the bases have changed at the table.
But it's still Dan Donovan over the 2 campuses, and then you're going to have an on-site administrator at the other school.
Yes. And I think we're going to change this on-site language because now it's like someone's just helicoptering in just to be.
Al?
I got a question in reference to technology. Is that including the whiteboards for the new school, or do we have whiteboards?
Yeah, we put a lot of those requests in our capital budget. There is some flexibility in this depending on what we ultimately decide to buy in terms of network security. So there could be some flexibility too for some more things.
Are there, again, I'm new to the board, so are there whiteboards at Denver High School currently?
So we have a few whiteboards, we have more classrooms with projectors with traditional whiteboards, can you write on, as opposed to a Promethean board. There are some of those, but we really haven't purchased those in quite a while, but there are still some at Denver High School.
Well, I would, again, be proactive. I think we need to, somewhere down the road, start budgeting this for the newer version, because that's what everybody's going to, the small boards. And we're leaving our teachers behind on further developing. And it's quicker education, it's quicker to getting the lesson out to the students.
I'm sorry. I was going to make comments on the supplies as well. I think we lowered possibly our supplies to try to make our budget work. And I see that there's 19,000 allocated for the new school for supplies. I just want to make sure that, you know, we provide if we're going to go ahead and not just do the budget that like turn the lights on kind of thing, that we put that money back into the supplies for the teachers. And you just reminded me, and I'll thank you, about the capital budget and the one-to-one computers, the almost $2 million that we were putting there. I'd like somewhere to address that again, maybe in this meeting. And forgot my last item. Thank you.
Mr. Janelle?
If you could refer to slide number 21. Again, I'm going to ask if you can total this, just roughly, this is some $18 million. But yet, if you go to your slide, it's not 31, you make a comment that the budget increased by $28 million. So I'm looking for that $10 million difference somehow to be categorized so that, again, I like to see numbers tie in. So if we talk about increases, we show it one way, $28 million, and we don't have to add up things and see $18 million and figure out where the other 10 is. So if you could figure out a way what the explanation for the additional 10 is, and somehow.
I was going to address that with one more slide coming up, the money slide. But I absolutely agree that it should be spelled out.
Okay. So slide 27 we just reviewed. Slide 28 is instruction improvement. And the question was posed at our last meeting, Kevin, what do we really need? And this slide is a better representation of, quite frankly, what we feel like the district should look like. And so what you're seeing here is a paraprofessional supporting a kindergarten teacher in every classroom in the district at $1.5 million. What you're seeing here is 15 additional bilingual paras across the school system to support our middle schools. This would help instruction in our classrooms, and to the point that Mr. Ginelli raised earlier, we're looking at the demographic breakup of our classrooms. This also means that our teachers are trying to meet the needs of special education students, multi-language learners, students who are learning the language for the first time, at the same time while they're trying to meet the needs of our regular students as well. Bilingual paraprofessionals afforded to our schools that can be deployed to support in various classrooms would help to address those needs considerably. As part of our original ask for Danbury High School, we had 4 bilingual paras. We would add 6 under this plan. This would give the high school 10 additional bilingual paras for the 24-25 school years, 24-25 school year. And then you see 4 additional buses for the system, which will address some of the concerns that we've heard from families and students for extracurricular activities, and make more buses available for our sport and extracurricular programs. So this comes out to an additional a little over $2.6 million.
When we originally had a preliminary budget, it was a little over 178 million. John came out really happy and excited and said I projected really high with energy costs and insurance costs. And in the next preliminary budget presentation, the number was reduced. We appreciate the feedback from the last meeting, and that's why the number has bounced back up to reflect some of the requests that were made at the last meeting. And so this next slide, titled Financial Summary, I'm going to hand it back to John. I think slide 30 begins to answer some of Mr. Janelli's questions, I'm not sure. But before we do, there may be some questions.
Thank you so much. Just a quick question for you. Slide 19 specifies the ESSER funding source at $10,937,000. And I'm noting on the key budget driver slide on 21 that the ESSER 3 expiring is $10,790,000. It's not a huge difference, but I'm just wondering where that, I think it's like almost 150,000 where that is.
So the lower number, that's what we're spending this year, 23-24. The 10.9 is what we're projecting for next year. So if we carry those staff into the new budget, that's what it costs.
Maybe I'm asking you a question wrong, John. The grants and general fund listed for the ESSER for this year, for this budget cycle that we're in, is 10.9. The budget driver for next year is 10.7. So you're saying that the cost for next year is still going to be 10.9? Maybe I misunderstood. I apologize.
The driver is, we took all the people that are here now.
I think that's the issue. And it's the people who are here now. I'm sorry, but I think that's the issue. Go ahead, John, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we took the people who are now, put them on their steps and lanes for next year, looked at the benefit selections from open enrollment, looked at the couple of other things that are in the ESSER now, our Kelly services, our high school overloads, some of the rent we're paying up the street, and just projected that for next year. That's
So
the driver.
The 10 point, I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question, Kate, and make sure we're answering it. The 10.9 on slide 19 is what's left in ESSER, and what John is speaking to is we had a little over $8 million projected in staffing for this year. It turns out we have enough vacancies that number is a little more like 7 million and something. And then we took those same staff, salaries and benefits, projected the cost for next year. And the reason why it looks a little under is because the staff that we had in there that was not here, we only fully over the people that we actually have.
Thank you so much.
In this grant.
And I just,
Yeah.
thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo Mr. Janelli's point about the difference. And I know that, and I saw that you've got this information in the slide that's upcoming, so of course we'll give you a chance to talk that through. But when you look at the key budget drivers, and that 10 million is going to say for the key budget drivers, even if it's just carry forward for all of the contracts or whatever other services, it might be helpful to have that category listed on the slide in some kind of way represented. So
What do you mean, Kate? I'm sorry.
There's a $10 million gap between the total ask and what is reflected on the budget drivers. It might be helpful to just have an overall category to break that down, because I don't see there in the presentation a breakdown of that 10 million specifically. I just see like the total ask, which makes sense, but it's hard to understand. And
So people can see.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. On slide 28. With the instructional improvement, the 45 kindergarten paras, do those include the paras that we currently have at that grade level? Or this is in addition to? Okay. And we're only focused on kindergarten, there is no need in a grade 1 through 5?
I agree.
correct in this strategy. I'm not saying there's no need, but this is what we think is most important.
I see you, Mr. Janelle. Yes.
Kevin, just the point of repeating myself, your explanation relative to the instructional improvement is good. But again, to the reader, if there's a way that in a narrative on these slides, if you could stress that, so again, it emphasizes why you're doing this and your need. Again, I keep going back to that we have to educate people as to what's necessary and why we're looking to do this.
Al?
I'm going to go back to Unita's question in reference to the 45 kindergarten parent. My question is, wouldn't it be proactive to identify maybe 2 or 3 kindergarten para bilingual? Because if we're going to use the 45 to, let's say, move around, it's not just kindergarten school, it's other grades. My question is, why don't we consider, maybe there's an answer to it that I'm not sure, or why don't we talk about MLL, our district being, multilingual. Kindergartens do speak Spanish and Portuguese and all before they come to school. So I'm just saying, why can't we do that, right? And my second question, if I can, the DHS enrollment. I know you said that Mr. Donovan requested 9 additional core teachers. Will that help us reduce class size to additional what we have? In other words, is these 9 additional positions going to reduce our class size?
Significantly, probably not, but it certainly will address the anticipated growth that's coming to the high school, plus address the students who are going to be remaining.
So, and then my other follow-up question to it, have we also considered, and again, I'm all about being proactive, but we also consider about those teachers of future retirees or possibly moving out of the district?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
What I'm saying is, are we considering possible future retired people, educators retired? Are we backfilling those positions? Are these 9 positions going to fill those?
So
I'm just trying to.
Right. So the 9 positions are new, and there's a case to be made about preparing for attrition every year because our system is big enough where we have new folks going into high school at every level. So that's certainly something we experience. We try to encourage our people who are retiring to let us know as early as possible. And then, of course, as a system, we have to deal with staff who might be leaving us and find multiple ways to try to backfill them. Of course, we have some pipeline programs, and so some of those help as a feeder into the district. But in other ways, it's kind of typical recruitment, whether that's from my HR or principals across the system.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I really want to stress that our students in our elementary schools seem, it appears, as if they're kind of being pushed to the side, secondary. Our focus has been on the middle school and the high school. We don't seem to have a focus, from what I can tell, on our grade 1 through grade 5 kindergarten, so probably. So I would love to look at that again, and I don't know why that's not part of the strategy that you're talking about.
When you say, I don't understand.
So
the
with
1
your
through 5.
instructional improvement, I'm looking at 28. The 45 paras are all being focused in the kindergarten, and I'm not sure why why the other grades are not included in, according to John, that was the strategy moving forward. Why the other grades are not included, as having a similar need. And looking at our investing in the earlier grades to look at success, higher success rates in your middle and high school as we're having greater success in the elementary. And especially when we talk about our bilingual, I'm not sure if we're looking, do we have any transitional numbers, students who are transitioned out of the program? We're putting a lot of money into, and we're talking about the increase in enrollment. But I haven't heard anything about we must have numbers that are transitioning out, or some type of data showing us transitioning out of that MLL programs that we offer. And so that's just coming. And number two, I would love to see the cabinet go back and look at what has been allotted for the schools for the upcoming year, as opposed to what the budget they submitted and asked for. That 30% decrease from last year to the upcoming year, it appears to me as inappropriate. Certainly, it is not enough for what we are asking our schools to do and staff to do. I would love for you to go back to the table to see if that 30% could be reinstated.
So the next slide, which is slide 30, is part of the financial summary. And John is going to walk us through this one. And at that point, John, will slide 31, and we'll show you in.
So I think in the interest of time, I'm going to get right to the point on this, the money slide. And you've heard Mr. Ginelli and Ms. Canetta talk about we need to explain this better. But this is what I think we'll be talking about. We spent a lot of time on budget drivers because these are the things that these are the new impacts on our spending plan. And they allow us to move the district ahead incrementally. Those budget drivers, and it's a great idea to show the total. It'll be $18.5 million when we draw that total. And what you see here up on the budget year to year, and using the lower, the $150 million, you see an increase of $28 million. That 28, 18 or so is from those drivers. And so what's the rest, the 10 million? That's what the two questions have gotten to. Now, but the answer to that is if you look up at the chart and you look at the middle column, this year's budget, particularly the undesignated, that was the shortfall this year. That's the difference between what Mr. Ginelli and I are talking about. What should we include that or not? But we have to make that up next year if we want to continue with this year's program and services next year. We need that money. That 4.7 million that we're making up, that's half of the 10. It's half of the 10. Now, if you just go from 150 to 160, up 10, that's a $6.9 million increase. And here's the point I'd like to leave you with. Just making up that deficit is 3.7% of the 6.9. The rest of the budget, the operating budget, year to year, and that's what we need to explain and talk about, is up 3.2%. So the lights on budget, we've called it, up slightly. It's not slight, it's millions of dollars, but 3.2%. 3.7 to make up the shortfall, and then the drivers on top of that. That's why we spent, really think, so much time on the drivers, because that's the story this year. So we can do more on that in our next meeting, but that's the point of the money tonight. Questions?
Yes, Michelle.
That doesn't reflect the almost 2 million in the one-to-one computers in the capital budget, correct?
It does not.
So
Capital
if you
budget,
were to
not part of
literally
this.
put that the way that we've always done it, that budget would be 2 million, almost $2 million higher. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we understand that. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Janelle.
On the slide, I'm not sure that we're matching apples and apples in your current budget, 23-24, where you've got the 4.7 negative numbers. I think it's your last meeting that we discussed last night. These numbers were reflected down to come up with the net of 150. So it shows a better comparison. The other thing is how do we go from purchase professional services of $6.8 million in 22-23 to $2.5 million.
So that's the restatement of the tutors. In years up until now, it was a $6 million figure. I've only restated this year and changed next year. I didn't go back to last year.
Okay, it's going to open up a lot of questions, so you're going to have to figure out whether you restate everything or just be aware. You're going to have a lot of questions that are going to be questions. The same thing on your enrollment impact, $1.3 million in the first year, and then they go to 16.7. Those are big increases.
Right, so the increase in that line last year primarily was the absence of ESSER 2 and some of the other enrollment needs that we met. And this year, it's the budget drivers, other than the last one you heard about, the academic.
And even has to be detailed between the other thing I would look for. This is one way of presenting it because you're looking to massage everything together and give a general breakdown by category, salaries, benefits, et cetera, et cetera. Another way to look at it, which I'd like to see, tying to your next schedule, is to, historically, we've always looked and we've come up with the terminology, the lights on budget. I'd like to see the comparison prior year, this year, lights on budget, and come up with that, and then you can compare your budget drivers so that you show what the incremental increases are on the budget, on the budget drivers. So hypothetically, just for the arithmetic, if your lights on budget increased $10 million and your overall ask is $28 million, then you have all the budget drivers totaling $18 million, and you got the lights on budget showing $10 million. You know, people can see really where it is. So it shows both ways of showing your financial statements. One by category and the other in the lights on versus basically new asks.
We have that. We prepared it internally for ourselves. That's easy to reproduce. Okay. Do that next time for sure.
That concludes our presentation. Ms. Cooper, if you have any questions, go ahead.
Teresa?
One question, this is not even you, Gladys, you had brought it up at one of our expulsion hearings, and I was just wondering, is there any thought to expanding the reach area for, due to the explosion of the number of expulsion hearings, to accommodate the students that are sent to Reach, Endeavor? I mean, this is coming down the pike, and Gladys pointed it out correctly, I think. I mean, is there any thought to this for the future, for expanding the facilities?
I think we are in the place where we're going to have to perhaps reevaluate almost every program that's offered in Danbury Public Schools, given our budget situation. And so I think it's going to be a need for us to evaluate kind of where we are and where we're going first before we look to expand anything. And I think that's part of what some subsequent discussions will be about, Teresa, including our retreat. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Yes, Mr. Janelle.
What is the calendar? I know you guys got a lot of work to do, day-to-day work, plus the added burden developing this for the presentation. I think it's mid-February. But based on the conversations we had previously and tonight, you compiling that and then refiguring the presentation, when are we, I mean, you don't have to answer tonight, but I'd like to see a calendar that we meet again to, you know, again, go through your next phase of it so that we, again, could tweak it and so that we can meet as often as possible prior to the adoption of the final presentation. Rather than be up against the gun on the 11th hour and a couple, 3 days before, you know, we're making final changes. So if there's a way that you can figure out according to your schedule, you know, some different meetings we can have to talk about this, even if it's only finance committee, and then we can brief the rest of the board. That's fine.
So I'm smiling as you're asking this question, Mr. Ginelli, because I shared with the team, no, don't put the calendar in here, we will not need it. and then there's your question. And so I'm looking at my calendar on my phone now. We have a regular board meeting on the 24th. We had an open window, if you want to call it open window, on January 31st, and we have a hold for a board meeting, anticipating we may need one. We did not put a hold on the calendar, but there is no board meeting on February 7th, and the next board meeting is not until we're back in cycle again on February 14th, which is when the budget is, the recommended budget is due to the city. So I'm saying all that to say we still have 3 Wednesdays available to us to go get them. One of them is a scheduled meeting, the 31st is a hold, and if we need more time, we still have the 7th open and available if we need to take advantage.
Thanks. I just didn't want you guys to be under the gun, under the pressure to you know, as we go through this, we constantly refine it to improve it.
Right.
And I tend to think sometimes the more you look at it, the better we tweak it there. But I'll leave it up to you as to what you're, you know, I agree with you as to that we can meet in the future. Whatever your timetable is, that's fine.
Thanks, Chris.
Al?
I just want to make a comment. I just want to again reinforce what Rich said. You know, the narrative, telling the story is what's all about the budget. And I got to compliment you know, the team for coming up with you know, from where we were about 2 weeks ago, last time, and to where we are today. I got to say that we became a little bit more quantifiable on our information. And I still say we're not there yet, but I think we're going to get there. I've always believed, and from my experience, that when you quantify a presentation, the end result is always good. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions tonight concerning the presentation. And please keep your dates open. This is budget season, and then we're going to leave budget season and go right into another season. So before you put your hats on and get out the door, I have the chairperson's report. It's going to be very brief. Everyone in your package, you have your assignments, okay? And it's late, and I have spoken to most of you, and you have your assignments where you want to be. Now, if at some point you want to change or have a conversation with me, pick up the phone and call me, okay? Everything, this is the correct way that we're going to do our standing committees. And you understand who has been suggested to be the chairperson of those committees. Okay. The next thing I'm going to ask you, please, you asked to be a representative on this board. Please check your emails. Don't go 2 or 3 days without checking your email. things are coming up that's very important. Sometimes Carol gotta call some of us 3 and 4 times to let us know that she needs to speak to you or what your assignments are, okay? So just, take time and go into your emails, okay? Saying that, thank you all again. I ask for a motion to adjourn this workshop. Made by, okay, seconded by Teresa. Thank you all again. And we'll see everyone Saturday morning at 9 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.